Dugout Nation, welcome to the Dugout CEO podcast. Today, we have a veteran entrepreneur and business leader, Tom Lutz. Tom has an amazing entrepreneurial story, which involves him being part of a $300 million business exit. And he has used his experience in building businesses to help other CEOs and business owners build better businesses, increase leadership success, and honor God as a Covene chair. Tom is also the author of the book, Equipping Christians for Kingdom Purpose in Their Work, a guide for all who make disciples. Tom, welcome to the Dugout CEO.
Hey, Casey, it's great to be here. It's been a while since we actually got face to face, so it's good to catch up.
Yeah, likewise. So, hey, let's talk about baseball. I know you're a big soccer fan too, and we're going to go there in a second, but let's start with baseball. So you said Baltimore Orioles fan, and I don't want to date you here, but you told me in the 60s and 70s. So we'll let our audience put that together. But an Orioles fan in the 60s and 70s, huh?
Yeah, but Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson, Jim Gentile, Boog Powell. My parents bought me, it was, I forget the name of it. It was some kind of kids club. You got 25 cents per ticket. And they were, what do we call bleachers? You know, it was outside the home, outside the home run wall. And my dad would drop me off at the stadium, maybe with some friends, maybe by myself. I'd take my little 25-cent ticket in there and go watch the games. So it was pretty awesome. I was actually just remembering yesterday, I think it's twice in the history of baseball, not since 1971, has one team had four 20-game pitchers, 20-game winning pitchers. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
So Jim Palmer, Dave McNally, Mike Cuellar, and the person nobody ever remembers is, do you know who that is?
I don't.
The fourth one? Pat Dodson. Who the heck is he? But he managed to win 20 that year as well. And it's also the year, much to my dismay, when I think the Orioles were up 3-1 in the World Series, and we lost to Pittsburgh Pirates. And I've not been able to listen to We Are Family since then.
Yep. I got a couple scars in my sports cheering days as well, for sure. And my goodness. So baseball in the 60s and 70s, it's changed a little bit. You were talking about there hasn't been 20 game. There's rarely a 20-game winner now. It's changed so much. So I know you're here in Atlanta. You go to a Braves game now versus a Orioles game back in the 70s. What's the biggest change you've seen from baseball back then to baseball now?
Well, I actually have. Well, I coach a lot of business owners, right? Yeah. So it's if you're gonna have a job, you might as well hang out with rich people. And so really, the first time I've been to the Braves Stadium, so I've had a love-hate relationship with baseball since the strike. I grew up, absolutely listened or watched every Orioles game, coached my older kids. I probably coached 50 different baseball teams over the time. One undefeated team, both one soccer undefeated, one baseball undefeated team. But when I went to this one, we went to something they call the Delta Club. Have you been to the Delta Club?
I have.
Memorial Stadium didn't have a Delta Club, and you certainly didn't get in for a 25-cent bleacher ticket. So it's definitely, the money that's in the game. I forget who it was a pitcher for the Orioles. Years later was doing a beer commercial and indicated it's mid to late 60s that his contract was $5,000 per year.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which was considered a good bit of money. I also reminds me of another story. Earl Hershiser, does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, well, they call him Bulldog, I think they called him, yeah.
Yeah, a pitcher for the Dodgers, I think.
Yep.
First pitcher, I think baseball player to sign $1 million contract. Okay. And at the event, or I guess there was some kind of a press release, or his father was there. And so some smart aleck reporter said, "Well, Mr. Hershiser, how does it feel to have a son who makes more money than you do?" And his father said, "I'll let you know when it happens."
I guess he was doing pretty good. And
he was doing he was probably doing okay, and he was making more than $1 million. So good memories at Baltimore Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, and you were just talking about the Delta Club at SunTrust Park, and for those of you that don't know, it's like the place to be. You know, all you can eat, entertainment, fun, community networking. It's so much more than baseball. And I think a lot of these stadiums, they figured out, all right, we can now pay out $1 million contracts because baseball teams have made it an experience. It's above and beyond just what
Oh
happens
yeah,
between the white lines. And I think that's really cool because
right.
baseball started realizing what type of business they're in. They're in the business of entertaining people. And the
Entertainment.
more people,
Yeah,
yeah, the
absolutely.
more people they can get in there. And you've seen probably the rules they've changed. It's made the game faster. It's made the game more watchable and all of that kind of stuff. And let's talk a little bit, Tom,
Hmm.
about your coaching of CEOs and business owners with Convene.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, happy
you know,
to.
from my understanding, you know, your job is to help these business owners hit home runs, right? Build better businesses,
Yeah,
increase
oh yeah.
leadership success. So, what is it that you've done to help other people, you know, reach the heights that you have helped these CEOs and business owners do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Convene is a national organization. I happen to be I'm a 1099 to them. Okay, so they provide materials and they provide the form processes and content, speakers. So there's about 70 or 80 people like me around the country operating. I operate two groups here in town. Um, and Convene's philosophy says learning happens over time in community. Learning happens over time in community. And so when you're thinking about that, my two groups, each 12, 13, 14 members, are all very different, but very much alike, right? They're CEOs, they're people of faith, they're committed to being the best leader God would have them to be in their respective business calling. But they're all, they're bright guys. They've been through a lot in business. They've got a lot of insight. And so you ask me, what's the single most important thing? I think it's convincing them not to make a decision without bringing a discussion back to your group.
That's yeah.
Just basically saying, I'm not smart enough to make this decision on my own. And I can tell you dozens of stories of guys that walked in on a day at over lunch, said, "Hey, I know what I'm going to do about ABC," and then we got talking about it, and they go, "Wow, I'm going to do something different," because they got Convene says Convene's the only game in town where every player has 12 coaches.
Do you see that as a common thing for entrepreneurs or business owners to have? Is something like
Oh, jeez,
that?
you don't. I mean, it would be like uh, I don't know, like a baseball player trying to play on their own without a team, without a coach. You get into a slump. What do? Right? Um, no, but it's surprising. So Convene, we're very much cooperative with other CEO groups. There are some of them that see us as very competitive and don't want to work. But we did some research. I did it with a CEO a year or two ago. I forget the number, but let's call it 400,000 Christian business owners. It might have been 4 million. I forget. Across the United States, less than 2% of them are in any kind of group like ours. And part of it is, we could be stubborn. We don't. Well, I don't need help. I'm Superman. You know. Um, but the stories I could tell you of just how powerful. I say every member's got $1 million story. Sometime during their 5, 10, whatever 12-year tenure in the group. And I think I had one of those conversations with one of my CEOs just this morning, which is, I think we're going to look back 5 years from now and go, that was $1 million moment. That was $1 million moment.
So why is that baseball players? I was talking to a big leaguer the other day, current big leaguer, and he's got a hitting coach, he's got a
Yep.
nutritionalist, right? He's got a speed and agility trainer, and he's actually got somebody mentoring him and his wife in their relationship together.
Yeah.
But he gets done playing baseball. Hey, I want to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to start my own business. I wonder if he would even have, hey, all right, well, I'm going to have a person that's going to coach me on this aspect of my company and this aspect of my company, whether it's how I communicate with
Right.
my team or how to put in better processes or how to manage the business by the numbers. Do you see that as a trait where athletes, whether they're a soccer player or a baseball
Well,
player, they have all these coaches, but business owners don't? And I'm wondering, why is that?
it's funny. The role of a CEO or entrepreneur is very isolating, right? So they expect us to be the smartest guy in the room. They expect us to be the richest guy in the room. They expect us to run everything and to pay for everything and not to complain. Because and all of a sudden we begin to believe those press reports, right? Maybe a good example. Um, so I had grew with a group of partners, a company that we sold for $300 million. So I was part of about a 9-person team that, I wasn't the head guy, but I was kind of second or third. And we sold that for a lot of money. I was 46 at the time. And then, so as a young man, I've got the money. I'm going to go out and now kind of go out and do some stuff on my own. I'm going to go out and maybe make some investments. I'm going to go out and I'm going to, whether invest in other things or do this or do that, and made a lot of mistakes because I thought I was made of steel. Here I am, 46, hotshot entrepreneur, got a boatload of money in the bank, and I managed to piss about half of it away just by because I didn't seek. What does the scriptures talk about? The absence of, it's in the abundance of counselors is wisdom. I wish I had a convene group back then. One of our favorite phrases in the group when someone comes in and says, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing." If it's not a good idea, somebody will say, "Casey, what are you thinking?" And we just go, "Oh, huh, yeah." Uh, because when you're isolated, you think you're smarter than you are.
So
And you have to present your idea in the light of somebody else's view, you begin to realize some of your ideas are kind of bad.
it's so easy to see the faults in others or I don't know if I would do that in other people's ideas, but it's hard to see that in your own. So, Tom, let me go
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
you as a 45-year-old. You built this business with some partners, $300 million exit. So, what was the question you asked? So, Tom, what the heck were you thinking, right? Like when you started making these investments and doing these things, and you said maybe made some choices that you wish you would have done differently and lost half, like what do you think was going on in your mind back then that, you know what, I wish I would have done something differently?
Well, what I wish I would have done was been humble enough to ask friends for advice on the decisions I was going to make. Um, the couple of decisions that I did make that turned out really well, generally speaking, were ones that I had. I had a particular one I was making going into business with my 2 older sons, and it's a business that's still very successful. It was of other than CMD, one of the best investments I made. They bought a warehouse, 40,000 square foot warehouse, which we broke out into 100 soundproof rehearsal spaces that we rent to bands on a month to month basis. And they're buying the building, and it's just been a home run. That particular one, I had a running buddy who was a financial advisor, and I talked the whole thing through with him, and he said, "Yeah, that's a good idea." Whereas the other ones, I was putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into, and never once asked somebody, "What do you think?" So nobody could say to me, "Hey, Tom, what are you thinking?" Because I never told anybody what I was thinking. I just went out and did it.
Interesting. I was just
So,
on
so
a show the other day with somebody, two brothers that built a business, Ebat Baseball and Softball Academy. I was on with Kay Griffiths, their CEO, and he brought in his brother. And I go, well, why did you bring
okay.
your brother into the business? I go, is it because you trusted him and liked him? He goes, yeah, I definitely trusted him. I definitely liked him, but he brought a different perspective and he challenged Cade, where Cade was like all gas, go. He was like, hey, let's think about this a little bit. He was really by the book
Yep,
and more
absolutely.
methodical. So
Yep.
I think it's really interesting to have those types of people that can say, hey, what the heck are you thinking before you even go and make that decision? And I guess that's what you do with
Yeah.
Convene, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the guys know at this point, before they sign a contract to before they bring on a new person, we'll vet them, we'll talk them through. I mean, you can make a lot of big mistakes, uh, and it's just so much easier. Be transparent, be humble, and just say, guys, look at this from your 12 angles, and tell me if I'm missing something. And I would much rather know I'm going to be in trouble in 6 months in advance rather than 6 months after.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a lot of times, we don't always pick everything up, but a lot of times somebody's going to have an insight that's going to raise a question or, help you think differently about fun. I don't know 100% if this is true, but it's the kind of story that rings true. There's a lot of Chick-fil-A owner operators are members of convene groups around the country, and I've been told. Now, you've been in a Chick-fil-A zip merge, right? Where you take the two lanes into one lane,
Yes.
right? Uh, so I was told that was a discussion at a convene group where the owner operator is saying, guys, I've got to figure out a way to get more people through that drive-in because we could probably double our noon sales, but now we're leaving all these people out on the highway and they're just turning away. I got to figure this out. And allegedly, somebody in the group said, well, have you considered having two that merge into one? And it was like, well, no, 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 no. This is a drive-in. It's one lane along the building. It's a drive-in, right? And it was just somebody that wasn't in the box came up with an idea that was out of the box. And sure enough, I don't think you can find a Chick-fil-A today that doesn't have the zip line,
Yeah, sure. So
right?
getting around other business owners, sharing
Yep.
your potential ideas, opportunities, challenges is really good. But what about the person that's saying, Tom, and I don't know how you guys structure it, but I think it's what, a day a month or something where you got to get out of your office and work on your business. What about the
Yeah.
entrepreneur, the business owner that's like, I don't have a day a month. I don't have the amount of time to sit here and meet. I'm running the business. I'm having to do this stuff. I'm kind of in over my head. I don't have enough time. I'm stressed out. I'm maxed out. You're now telling me to slow down and meet other business owners and share my ideas and thoughts with them where I'm just trying to survive. How would you answer that person?
Yeah. So of course, I've been told that more than once, and I've got a standard answer, which is, Casey, I will guarantee you that you don't have one day. You've got two or three that you could, if you stop doing stuff you shouldn't be doing, which a convene group can help you figure out. You give me a day, I'll give you back two. Because you are doing 20% of what you spend your day doing ought not to be done. You just don't know what it is.
Yeah. So they're just running really fast, but they're running sometimes in circles around
They're
things where
running
you help
stupid.
them.
They're
Yeah.
running stupid.
And
I remember I had one of my CEOs at one point. It was a fast growing company. They'd gone from 1 million to 3 or 4, maybe 5 million on their way. Now they're up closer to 20 million. And you know what? As I do it occasionally, hey, just tell me about your week. What have you been doing this morning before I came in? He said, oh, I was running the invoices. And I said, time out. You're doing what? Oh, I love running the invoices. Then I kind of know what money is going to be coming in and how things are going. And his brother was there. They were equal partners. And, and I just laughed. I said, that's like $10 an hour work. You should be doing $1,000 an hour work. I said to his brother, I said, look, let's make a deal. If I come back here next month and he's still running invoices 10 hours a week, we're going to pay him $10 an hour. Needless to say, the next month he'd hired somebody for $12.50 an hour, and he would get the reports of what. But he wasn't. I mean, literally, this is the CEO of a $5-6 million company, spending 10 hours a week typing into QuickBooks. And then he tells me I'm too busy. I can't possibly afford to sit around and think strategically for 8 hours a month.
And you just
I mean,
basically get them out. You basically get them out of the grind and start thinking smart because they're doing things
right.
that they shouldn't be doing, or they're doing things that ultimately aren't the things that they even should be doing that are going to move the needle, right?
They just, it's stuff they like to do. It's stuff they think other people don't like to do, so they do it. Uh, but there is very, very little that the average CEO does that can't be better done by somebody else, thus freeing them to think strategically and big picture, um, around the country.
Is it because they're like, hey, it's going to take me too much time to train them? I might as well do it myself.
Oh yeah,
Or is it that's one reason?
that's a big part of it. Or what if they do it wrong? Then I got to go back and fix it, and I already don't have any time to. That's the mindset. If I make a mistake, then I have more piled on me. It's just easier to get it done, and that's short-term thinking. But then you're just digging a deeper hole. And a company, I think it's less than 7% of companies in America are over $1 million, right? Because you just can't. Uh, if you have that mindset of you've got to have your fingers in every piece of the pie, you can't get a bigger pie than $1 million. That's as big as a pie that you can get your arms around. But then how do people go from, I remember at CMD, I went from, I was my first partnership role, I had 3 employees, maybe $600,000, not even that, maybe more like $60,000 of revenue, because it was a long time ago. And then I ended up when we were done, still one of the top leaders in the company, running a division of 500 people. Right? You have to have a different mindset, and you got to start it back there, delegating to those 3 people, so that when you got 6, they're not all. 'Cause there's no way I could direct the activity of 500 people. And if you don't at some point learn how to get things done through people, then you're just not going to be able to you're not going to be able to get anywhere past that hurdle. You're going to have a ceiling that you just can't break through.
I think those were a few of the mistakes I made early in my career. I was the only person that could get it done at a 10 out of 10 level. So I'm like, well, if I'm the only person that can
Yeah.
sell this thing like this, well, then I'm the only one that can sell it. But what I realized was if I could find somebody else that could do it 8 out of 10 and I could go and find more opportunities, it evens itself
Yep.
out. And I'm not the one stuck doing something that ultimately I didn't like to do. So I just had to get over the
Right.
fact that, look, no, in certain aspects of my business, there were certain things that nobody could do as good as I would, just because that was
Hmm.
my gift. But then there was a lot of other things that people would actually do a lot better than me, right? Because that was their gift. It's just so hard
Absolutely.
to get the business owner to realize that, and to let go and realize, all right, somebody else can do it, but it's not going to be done your way or as good. Is there some
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
formula or something that, hey, this is just read this? Because if we could solve that issue with entrepreneurs, it would unleash people to grow and scale their business.
Well, there are a variety of delegation tools and processes that you can do. But one thing I always ask people, you just started it. So Casey, you're 10 out of 10, man. I appreciate that. You are really good at this. 2 questions. Number one, what is what you're not doing costing us, right? And then you said, so hey, I can find somebody who can do it 8 out of 10. Well, if you find 2 that can do it 8 out of 10, what do we have? We have 1.6. We have 16 out of 10, right? And now all of a sudden we do that again. We got 24 out of 10, and they're blowing you out of the water. And now what are you doing? You're figuring out how to support the 24 to get them to a 26, right? That's how the genius of delegation works.
There's the formula. I think we just came up with it. We need to write down those numbers
Yeah.
because that makes sense. And I never really looked at it that way. So I think that's really good. So above and beyond the work that you do, with your CEOs and business owners.
I play golf a couple days a week. I work part time doing the things that I love and I'm really good at. Okay. One of which is coaching these CEOs. I think it's the training that God gave me through being a pastor for years, to being leading a business the size of the business that I led. I'm uniquely, uh, I don't mean to sound like I'm boasting, but there's not many people that are better at this than I am. And so you know how it works when you're really in your sweet spot, you're energized and you're going. But it takes me 15 hours a week. And then I also teach, as you may remember, at Metro Atlanta Seminary, because I do have that background. I was a pastor and I was a business guy. So I tell my friends I'm bilingual. I speak business guy and I speak pastor. So I've always had an interest in asking the question, what's more important, the work that I do or studying the Bible, for example? Does God care? Does God care about baseball? Or are you just making money? And, does God care about construction information? Does God care? And I think he uniquely does. If you go back and look at the creation narrative, he creates over 6 days, right? And over the 6 days, he said, this is good, this is good, this is good, repeatedly. And then he finally creates what he calls the imago Dei, the image bearer, the image of God. So Adam and Eve, puts them into that garden, which he made, mind you. He didn't subcontract out, he made it. And then once the image bearer is in the garden, he says, now it's very good. So there's something about interjecting male and female, man and woman into the garden that makes the garden that God made, it makes God's garden better. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Then he gives them 3 instructions. Instruction 1, he says, this place is empty. Okay, so remember the garden, the world wasn't the garden. The garden was the garden, right? And so this little cultivated, beautiful spot was just that, a cultivated, beautiful spot. He said, this place is empty. I want you to, and we always say fill. When I say fill, people think go have babies, right? Which is part of it. But really the Hebrew word means create abundance. Create abundance, right? So he says, this place is empty. I want you to go, take the seed I put in there and I want you to cultivate it. I want you to do it. Number 2, he says, this place has infinite potential. Imagine that. You will never exhaust the potential that an eternal God has placed in this world. So go cultivate it, right? Why cultivate it? Cultivate it to create flourishing. It's the Hebrew word, shalom. Create shalom. Create a world in which everybody is doing well. That's picture number 2. And then number 3, and this is always raises eyebrows. This place is dangerous and incomplete. I want you to subdue it. And why subdue it? For the flourishing of others. And so the picture then becomes, so the subtitle of the book is A Book for All Who Make Disciples. And the idea with a make disciple, and this is really a key theme in the book, is that the mistake the church has made is we have taught our disciplers to disciple people as church members, to talk to you as if the most important thing you do is what you do nights and weekends at church. Now, it's important. I'm a committed leader. I mean, you know my background. I'm committed to church leadership, and I think the church is a very important institution. But I don't think it's more important than the Chamber of Commerce, because the church can't create a flourishing community, right? So the desire in writing the book is I want you, when you're talking to people, if you're leading a men's group and they're talking about their jobs, I want you to have the theology to be able to help them understand why God cares that the trash be collected or the HVAC be fixed or baseball be played or we never did. You promised me I was going to talk about soccer, so you're not going to let me talk about, or actually football that you actually use your feet on, if you don't mind my saying. But those stuff's important because that's the picture, right? And so we have to learn to disciple people to be whole people, right? Not just church members. So that's
And
why I wrote it.
and what have you seen and how have you actively used this in with some of your business owner clients or CEOs to help them, I guess,
Mhm.
create thriving businesses? How have you actually done that? Do you have any case
Yeah.
studies or examples?
Well, I was just talking to today. So, very large company. They make storm drain piping. Okay, so when you see a new construction site, you see these great big corrugated plastic or steel pipes, right? You don't see them after because they get buried underground. You know what would happen if those weren't there?
No idea.
Do you remember it was back, maybe it's been 10 years ago. We had 20 some inches of rain one night in September. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's not 2009, 2010. Um, if so at the time, I think that was right around when the Braves, uh, the Sewanee Braves or whatever, I forget what they're called now, stadium was being built, and Wally's company put in that infrastructure. He said that infrastructure was designed to accommodate a 100-year flood of water. He said it almost crested. Had they not done that correctly, that whole building would have been completely washed. That whole community would have been devastated, right? And so what I've this is a question. It's one of the chapters in the book. A question I've taught business owners to ask is, guys, what would happen if nobody did what we do? No, but what would happen if nobody did what we do? And if you really begin to ask that question, the world would not be flourishing, right? Some of them are obvious: doctors, nurses, lawyers, teachers. Those are the easy ones. But how about trash collectors? People don't collect the trash. You got bubonic plague. What good is Billy Graham organization going to do if everybody's dead, right?
Sure.
I had another guy. I teach this a lot, and I had a company that, and I asked that question in the workshop. And this, do you know what fasteners are? You've been involved in construction at all?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, fasteners are hinges and hooks and latches and just things that fasten things together. And he got laughing and he said, Tom, the world could not exist as we know it, right? And then you go back and you think, what is when in it's either Philippians or Colossians, Paul says, God who holds all things together. Jesus Christ who holds all things together. That's the job of a CEO if you think about it. We got to keep the whole piece working together.
That's
But
great.
anyway, yeah. So the book is really written. It's not written for you as an image bearer. It's written for you as a discipler of image bearers. So it's a how-to book, and that makes it very different. When I did my dissertation, you do what they call a literature review on your topics. So my doctoral dissertation is discipling C-level Christian executives. And so I went with at my university or seminary. I went with the librarian to find out, well, what other literature is there? And literally, there is none. And there's no other books written by pastors to teach you how to disciple people for the work they do outside the church. And so it was at that point I said, we got this. This is a book that needs to be written. You don't need another book on the theology of work. There's plenty of good books out there on the theology of work. This is more designed. You should read it. If you haven't, you should read it, and it'll change the way you do your podcasts because it'll have you thinking differently about the fact that ball player you're talking to is called by God. Hopefully, they're called by God to do the work that they do, and then answer the question: is the world a better place as a result of me being executing my kingdom purpose. Um, and that's what we as disciples, that's what we need to do. We need to help people think that
This is great. So if you were to summarize it, equipping Christians for kingdom purpose in their work, if you were to explain that to, you know, my grandpa, how would you simplify that message? Hey, grandpa, I just read this book. I'm a business owner. I've read this book. This is what it helped me do and understand. How would you simplify that?
I would say it helped me to help my. I'm gonna give it in the blue collar context because that's where a lot of my guys are, and that's really where it's most needed. At CMD when I had 500 uh, high performing, productive white collar sales guys, they felt good about themselves. The world felt good about them. They would commend them. They drove fancy cars, wore nice clothes, lived in nice houses. So while they had a bunch of needs, had different needs. They didn't have self-esteem needs. Okay. So you take the guy that works on the floor making a welding pipe for out in Winder. Nobody's patting that guy on the back every day and saying, you are really important. The world would not be, if you didn't do your job well, the impression he's given is if you didn't do your job well, who cares? Who cares? And I think we learned from COVID what happened when those people didn't do their jobs well, right? All the people that we depend on to just keep everything moving and don't bother me with the details couldn't do it. And all of a sudden, all us hotshot white collar guys began to realize, well, I can't get supplies. I can't, stuff from China isn't coming. And they're sitting out there in the water. And well, it's because all these blue collar guys weren't able to do what they're supposed to do. Anyway, but then that's what this conversation I had this morning with the owner of this business was, you got to teach your top leadership team to constantly reinforce to the worker out there welding, putting pipe up on a truck, driving the forklift, sweeping the floor, whatever it is. You've got to teach your people how to affirm the God-given importance of the work that they do, and it changes your culture. There's a famous story. I probably have told it before on podcasts, but it's a good one. So John Kennedy announced the race for space. We were going to be the first to put a man on the moon. That's probably before your time. It wasn't before my time, although I was a very young man at the time. And he was at what's now called Cape Kennedy, was then called Cape Canaveral, and actually may even be called Cape Canaveral again. And was going around, and young man, what do you do? And what do you do here? What do you do? Well, the janitor came by. Kennedy said, and sir, what do you do? He said, I helped put a man on the moon. Wow. Somebody had built into that culture, cleaning the toilets and fixing the hot water heater was a part of the mosaic. So when that astronaut stepped on the moon, that janitor was saying, I had something to do with that. Imagine if every business treated its employees that way, this world would be a better place to be. And that's what we try to do in the book, is just teach leaders how to think that way.
I look back at when the Cubs won the World Series back in 2016, they were asking Theo Epstein, how'd you do it? And he sat there and he thanked the people that were scouting, international players, that were scouting high school kids, right? That were the massage therapists and the speed and agility trainers and the analytics people. Like it takes everybody in a business to work together. And we use a tool in our business called the Vision Map, where it literally writes down what is the impact you will make on this business if you do a good job.
Awesome.
And what happens if you fail to execute. So they see both the upside if they do a great job and then the downside. And Tom, I think that's amazing because everybody from the top to the bottom has to see like their impact in the business, and super excited for this book. Yeah. I will link it in the show notes.
It only takes one link. It only takes one link in that chain for the chain to fall apart.
Yeah.
You could have a mid-level director who's not, who's hearing it up here and blocking it from getting down to the floor. You got to have that message tube has got to go from the top to the bottom.
Real good. Where does somebody
Yeah,
learn
you can get
more?
the book. You can get the book just anywhere you buy books. It's on Amazon. It's on christianbooks.com. I have a page called, we'll post this podcast up when you get it ready. It's called Facebook/vocational discipleship. So we keep news about the book up there. Um, a lot of times, if you go to the Tyndale, which is the publisher, Tyndale, and search for the book, they often have a discount price because they sell them direct there as opposed to through distribution. So you can often save 20 or 30%.
Well, Tom, once again, thank you from your experience as an entrepreneur, growing, building, scaling, exiting a business, to your time being an advisor for other CEOs and business owners, to this book you wrote. It's really life well lived, and it's just really cool the impact that you've been able to have on others, and you have used your story to help influence other people. So thank you for doing that, and really appreciate you, Tom, being a guest on the Dugout CEO.
It's been fun. God bless you, friends. See you. Hope we get together before too long.
Thanks, Tom. Dugout Nation, wow, what an amazing time with Tom Lutz. What a wealth of information and knowledge from someone with a life well lived. Here are the big 3 takeaways that I learned from Tom. Seek wisdom first and don't run stupid. Be a smart entrepreneur. Have someone you trust and share what's going on in your life and your business with them. Have a group or a key advisor in your business that you share ideas with. Ideas like businesses to buy, investments to make, products or services to launch, and share your ideas and issues and challenges. Know that your ideas, they might sound good in your own mind, but have somebody else come in, poke holes in your plan, and ask logical and tough questions, because most business owners are ready, fire, aim, which oftentimes is good, but oftentimes slowing down and getting wisdom and advice from others is key. Number 2, teach people why their work matters. Everyone in your organization, from the C-suite to entry level, needs to understand why their job matters and the impact that it makes on everybody else. JFK, when he told them, "We're going to the moon," he then went and asked the janitor what he did. And that janitor said he helped put a man on the moon. He knew and understood that because he did his job, everybody else could do their job. And at the end of the day, they all made an impact of putting somebody on the moon. Number 3, lots of successful people and entrepreneurs end up making poor decisions after they hit a certain level of success. But why? Well, when you're hot and things are working, you think you can't be beat. But when you're hot and things are working, you got to slow down, be smart. And so many business owners, whether they make a big exit, they're jumping into the next thing, or they invest in the next thing, they need to slow down and really understand, is this the best thing to do? And is this something that's ultimately going to help me get what I really want? Entrepreneurs, leaders, and business owners move so fast, and especially when they're experiencing success, more opportunities are going to come their way, and very few are worth their time or their investment. And it's necessary to have yourself slow down and really understand, where do you want to go? And is this next opportunity going to help me get there?